What's up, YouTube? I am taking a quick break from my day job to answer a question. This is a new patron sponsored segment, and how exciting is that? So, listen, if you'd like to have your question answered on air, consider joining our Patreon where we are building intentional community. And you can do that by clicking the link in the description. It's an easy way to connect, and our numbers are still manageable enough to really get to know each other. All right, so we have a question today, and I'm going to start by putting this on the screen. Yoink. Here we are. This question comes from Charles. Hi, I would love to hear about what it's like being a black atheist, both as an atheist who is black and as a black man in an overwhelmingly white male group. I get the question, and I'm sure it's one that I'm going to get a lot, primarily because, let's be honest, us black atheists represent niche black women atheists even more so. And so yeah, this is a real thing. So I'll start here because, and honestly, Charles, I had to actually sit down and think about this quite a bit. It took me a while. But so I'll start here with probably the elephant in the room, or the most obvious, and that's the isolating aspect. The first aspect of this, even when just thinking about becoming an atheist as a black man, and I will give this caveat that, of course, I don't speak for all black people. No, we've not gotten together and made that election. But so, and all of our experiences can be drastically different. So I am definitely just speaking about mine, and I do believe that's what Charles asked for. Is my experience, and so that's what I'm gonna share. So for me, it was definitely isolating. Just even thinking about, you know, coming to that decision of knowing how it would impact, how it would impact me, knowing that I am black, I am atheist, and I live in Alabama, out of all places. And so one of the things that you kind of know for sure is that once you come out of this, church world, especially for me, because I was not casually Christian. I was professionally Christian, which means this was literally my livelihood, and not a very good one at that time. But yeah, this was, all of my relationships were built around this. I had sacrificed quite a bit to live that certain way, and so coming out of that, there's really nowhere to go, right? There's no safe places, and when I say there are nowhere, I want to be very careful here. I'm not saying that there literally isn't. I'm saying those are the things that go through your mind, that where am I going to go? What places can I go? And for me, that was my reality, of course, in Alabama, that there weren't any active groups that were, providing any type of community aspect. So, no safe places to process the grief and inevitably explore who I'd like to be after the fumes faded. So, all of that stuff kind of ends up happening in a cocoon because of such an isolating experience. The conversations that were the most critical for me during that time were conversations that I couldn't have with other people without making them extremely uncomfortable. And so, even from a sense of exploration, of wanting to explore the world, of wanting to know, okay, what exactly is um, the truth, or at least reality of the Bible, from my perspective. That's one of those conversations, like, no, 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 not what do you believe about it? No, like, literally, how did this get here? Why do we get this? Why? One of the things that Christians say, well, if it wasn't supposed to be, why has it persisted so long? And I'm like, well, anybody with a history degree or a sociology degree can answer that question for you quite easily. And those are the type of conversations I wanted to have, among many others. And I just realized that even having these conversations, it was uncomfortable for other people, which leads me to my second kind of point of my experience, is that it was also closeting. I was gonna look up that word to see if it actually was a word, and if it's not, then I just invented it. And if it is, and I'm using it wrong, then I've just reclaimed it. We'll do that. um, but closeting, the social cues were clear that my worldview would not be accepted, embraced, or tolerated by anyone, uh, for the majority in my circle, outside of a very small minority. that if anybody actually knew where I stood, they would see me as deceived by the devil and treat me and everything I would say or do as demonic, which some people do at this very moment. Actually, quite a few, even close family and friends who don't live according to any religious standards. In order to in order to still be family, to still be friends, to still be worthy of recommendation, support, or even understanding, I'd have to pretend. And those are my options. That's what I mean by closeting. It's a closeting experience. You either have to pretend or lose every social attachment you have in this world. And again, I'm not saying that's every black atheist experience, but that was most definitely mine. And I did try to pretend for a while. I tried to find ways to synchronize my passion for people with the mythology, to make sense of the superstition for people, and perhaps even find a way to use religious language and hopefully Christian sincerity to as tools to help people with their deconversion processes, or to help kind of accelerate that deconversion process. And it was valuable work. I did enjoy that. I still find that work highly interesting. In fact, ever since then, or actually literally for the past 10 years, my wife and I have been highly invested in writing out and strategizing different ideas on how to intentionally create community for non-believers and deconverts. And yeah, deconverts. Yeah, that works. So closeting, and so if you really begin to feel like, or at least for me, I begin to feel like, the only way I can exist around people is to pretend like that I am not who I am, and that I don't think what I think. And that's just one side of it. The other side of it is then not only to pretend like I don't think these things, or I'm not this person, but also to suppress any opportunity to have further conversations about these things, which conversation is how we grow. And so within that, even and within that closeting experience, I begin to realize that this is robbing me of incredible learning opportunities. Now that I know these things, I want to talk about them, and I want to talk about them with people uh, who know something about this. Which brings me to this third point, and that is draining. So far, it's been isolating, it's been closeting. No, I want to talk about the draining aspect. There's absolutely nothing flattering about feeling like you're talking above everybody's head. And that's what I feel like, or I have felt like a lot, especially before coming out of that prayer closet and actually intentionally looking for atheist community and connecting with other people. Conversations were very draining. Becoming an atheist provided me with the articulation to describe a feeling that I had often felt as a Christian, but never felt comfortable quite saying out loud. And that word, that feeling, the word for that feeling is indifference, right? I realized that most people in my circle, close and far, friends and family, were having conversations that I was literally completely indifferent to. So, yes, I did understand that there's this aspect of wanting to still be close to family and friends and things, because, that's what you do. And, as humans, that's what you want. But then at the same time, and of course, I'm going through this thing of, oh man, I got to hide who I am to be around them. But then you kind of get to this point like, I don't even like the conversations they're having. These are not conversations that interest me. And this is actually, this is not a new thing. It's just now that atheism has allowed me to live so, or at least my relationship with this has allowed me to live so authentically that I can be honest with myself now, and give that type of articulation to feelings of social anxiety and discomfort that I couldn't articulate before. And so now I realize, like, holy crap, this whole time I was so uncomfortable around, a lot of these groups, because all of these conversations are nothing but gossip. You're either gossiping literally about what somebody's doing, that you don't like, or you're gossiping about what somebody's doing that you do like, or you're gossiping about your favorite celebrity or your favorite football team. And just to be clear, I ultimately define gossip as you talking about anything that you have no intentions and no plans of doing anything about it. So for me, it was very draining to be constantly to be doing so much work to fit into something that was not actually benefiting me. Because now that I, was giving myself permission to think and to giving myself permission to live, I definitely wanted to explore. I definitely wanted to grow. Even when I was in the church world, I was definitely growth centric, which is why I stayed confused all this time because I kept preaching about growth and praying about growth and not seeing growth in the areas that really mattered to me. And of course, now I see it's because, well, I wasn't taking responsibility for those areas. I had put those things in the hands of the Lord, and I wasn't in an environment that was conducive for those things either. So, which kind of brings me to my next one, and I'll just kind of make this my last point for the first part of the question, and that's liberating. So it was isolating, it was closeting, it was draining, but if you kind of notice through that process of me, and at least just kind of sharing my experience, it's leading somewhere. And for me, it was leading to some very strong conclusions for me. Going through those phases gave me a lot of necessary answers, primarily that my life prior had been, that my life prior had not been in a healthy place. I was not in a healthy place. I was over 580 pounds. I was in constant depression, constant anxiety, always stressing about something. Every week was an emotional breakdown. Like it was turmoil. I was a lot of times immobilized by indecision, either because for me, my Christian experience was you're always waiting for, especially as a Black Christian, you're always waiting for the approval of God through the approval of the crowd. And that crowd can mean very different things for different people. Sometimes that crowd is your family, sometimes that crowd is your friends, sometimes that crowd is your contemporaries or preachers. But ultimately, that's how you discern the approval of God. And so my crowd was so damn dysfunctional that I could never find the approval of God. And so it was oh Lord, it was devastating. But I realized that my life wasn't in a healthy place because my life was not part of a healthy ecosystem. I think one of the most dangerous ideas that I had, and you may not see it this way, but this is just me, was that God has a plan. I think that was probably one of the most damaging doctrines that I ever accepted, or that anybody in my community ever accepted. Because then we often use it, especially for people who are born into traumatic experiences or born to single parent households. Also, God wanted you to be here. God has a plan for your life. And it's those type of things. Um, and while that sounds very nice, it sounds very, very encouraging. In the wrong context, that can absolutely rob people of their responsibility for making a plan for their own life, and it can rob them of. And this is probably the point. It can rob them of seeing that the people who brought them into the world did not have a plan, and it would probably be a good idea for them to start getting one. Um, and so what I start looking at is realizing that my family, and I can't speak to everybody else's family, but my family are, are just a whole bunch of people who didn't make plans. Life just kind of happened to them. They were surprised about it. They were doing things that causes life to happen, but they were very surprised about all these things happening. So this doesn't necessarily create a family. We use the word, but we do not operate like a family. We weren't very functional. We don't really support each other. We could do the trivial things. We can come together and eat together. We can come together, well, and eat. That's pretty much it. Eat and listen to music. But as far as anything other than that, it really didn't exist. And I was expecting it to exist for the longest time because God has a plan. And so, I don't know, especially Black Christians, and maybe some Christians from other cultures, maybe you've experienced this ideology too. But you're going to be the Moses to the family, and so you begin to bear the burden of, I'm going to be the one who pulls all of this dysfunction together. But you don't even have a real definition for that. You don't have anybody else's agreement on that, and then you find out part of being a Christian, at least for me in my context, was really about pushing your impositions or imposing your desires on other people. And this became realizing this became very liberating for me, because then I realized, oh man, because this tension existed long before I became an atheist. I was already always just kind of different, and this tension always existed is because I actually do long for healthy relationships. I do long for healthy systems, and this was never healthy for me. And this family structure was never healthy. And I don't say that to say anybody tried to do anything negative. I say that to say that this system was never designed to be healthy. As none of these people came together with the intention of building something healthy. These are all people who are living, just by the consequences of life. I wanted to say something else, but I decided not to. So I ended up letting it all fall away. The draining, the closeting, the isolation. It became, nope, this is just the process. This is going through the cocoon. And so for me on the other side, I feel absolutely amazing. I lost over 300 pounds. My wife and I pulled our family from beyond the brink of just absolute abject poverty. Our kids are bright and amazing, doing well in school, doing well with their relationships with friends. And we all as a family feel secure in our capacity to interact with, learn from, and adapt to the world around us in a way to make the most of our experience here while we can. Do still very much so crave community, and I'll continue to contribute to that work among non believers and deconverts in every way that I can. But I gratefully choose functional isolation over ornamental relationships any day of the week. So that's my part on the first question, and I know I've gone quite a bit already. Wow, 16 minutes. So I'll hit the second part of the question, you know, um, quite quickly. As a black man in an overwhelmingly white male group, I think I've been lucky here because my deconversion journey included so many black free thinkers, past and present. Um, I, I have Pan African tendencies, and so I've studied people like Hubert Henry Harrison, who was the Black Socrates of the 20s. Because of him, we have what's colloquially known as the Harlem Renaissance, but what was initially known as the New Negro Movement. He was actually one of the first people to coin that term. If it was no Hubert Henry Harrison, there would be no Carter G. Woodson, there would be no um, Marcus Garvey. And so Hubert Henry Harrison, well, there'd be no Harlem Renaissance. Hubert Henry Harrison was a avid atheist and wrote quite a bit on it, and along with some others. Booker T. Washington was probably as close to atheist as most could get. He was just so much of a politician that was something that he didn't make public, but he did consistently make heavy critique against the church, as did Carter G. Woodson. But then there's also people like Claude McKay and Langston Hughes, of course, James Baldwin, Bayard Rustin, A. Philip Randolph, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Anthony Penn, and one of the most recent deconverts over the past few years that was near and dear to my heart, Brady Goodwin. And so there were so many black faces and black voices of free thought while I was coming into the atheist community, that my experience is actually the opposite. And of course, remember, I'm still kind of new. Um, I haven't been that minority yet, right? And that's just because right now, all of the white atheists are new to me. They're, oh, this person was an atheist. Didn't you know that? So now while because a major part of my background is sociology, I am aware of the statistics, and I do know that black atheists are a minority. I just simply haven't been in a room yet to feel that yet, and then just having the example of some of those people on that list, especially Dr. Tyson and Dr. Penn, both of them, having them as examples, it really helps me not feel like the minority in the room. And I've also pulled so much self worth out of my deconstruction process, and that's something I love to speak about more. There's simply not a room in this world that I could be in that I wouldn't be comfortable in, because I'm just comfortable with me. And with that being said, I'm still new to the scene, and I'd like to get into some more rooms to actually engage those dynamics in real time. Because again, my experience, of course, will not ever represent everybody's experience. And then my experience is still brand new as far as being out here and being public. And of course, I've been online and been on podcasts with some phenomenal people. who are not Black. um, and in those rooms, again, because it's interview style, I'm still not the minority. So we will see. We will see. I will definitely try to get into some more rooms and engage those dynamics. And I love to have those conversations. But overall, Charles, thank you so much. This was a absolutely phenomenal question. I appreciate you asking it, and I'm humbled for the privilege of being able to answer it for you. Now, in fact, it was such a great question that it has me thinking about taking this conversation a step further. Um, Again, because I can only speak for me. What I'd love to do is get some others in on this conversation, to have this conversation in a way that others can see it. I've met a lot of new friends who I'll be talking to about coming together to share their experiences, who are all Black atheists, Black men and women. Um, and get them together in a group conversation. I think we have a lot of allies in the community who would greatly benefit from hearing the similarities and the diversities of our experiences. And perhaps through transparent dialogue such as these, we can build stronger community among atheists and skeptics across all lines of cultural differences. So I'll be working on that. Charles, again, thank you for your question. And of course, again, if you'd like your question answered on air, consider joining our Patreon, where we're building intentional community. So click the link in the description. Thank you guys for your time. I'm out.